1 whole month! It's been 1 whole month! We were supposed to record this a month ago! It's been 1 whole month because... Oh my gosh, so many things happened to the both of us. Life got in the way, tragically and inexorably.
Indeed, but now we're back to talk about comics again. Yay!
And we got nothing prepared.
Got nothing prepared? Our whole plan from the last month, we got all that planned.
Basically, we managed to agree to do this recording the day before this very recording. That's no good in terms of organization. So we do not have a feature presentation to review. I mean... if anything else, I've been collecting a lot of material to showcase and review for future episodes, like, for example, this Italian graphic novel here,
nice,
titled Tobiko, which is an allegory about protecting the environment, the power of love triumphing over evil, and war is bad. And it's about as transparent and annoyingly on the nose as it could possibly be, so I wanted to share this with you some other day. I would have to reread it though, because I immediately forget everything about it. Even though it has a freaking teddy bear that turns into a giant robot, it still manages to be utterly forgettable.
Yeah.
Secondly, there is... I have a physical copy of a pretty well-known ongoing webcomic, Cucumber Quest.
Oh, I've heard of that, actually.
Well, yes, the artist GGDG is pretty famous. Most Undertale fans must be aware of her or his existence.
Yeah.
Their existence. I don't know their gender, so I'm just going to use it. And if you heard about this, then you must know this is actually a pretty adorable and brightly colored drawn comic that pokes fun and satirizes the various obtuse tropes of fantasy stories and the whole concept of the hero's journey as well. It's a pretty good read. And furthermore, I have possibly the most interesting graphic novel, or let's just say more of a compilation of comics, Johnny the Homicidal Maniac by Jonan Vasquez, which you might know for being the creator of Invader Zim, a cult classic.
Yeah.
So, the title doesn't give you much to work with, does it?
No, not really.
It's an homicidal maniac named Johnny, and it has all the charm, but also all the unwieldy trappings of amateur writing you can find, and it definitely shows that this was Vasquez's first work. Because it does one aspect really well, but everything else, it's pretentious garbage, for the most part. It's been a long time since this came out, and Invader Zim is, for better or for worse, is the thesis of his maturity as a writer and a cartoonist. But it's nice to reminisce how certain comic book artists started off. And the fact that a guy who wrote Johnny the Homicidal Maniac turned up to make a Nickelodeon show. Wow. Early 2000s. Weird period of time indeed. So anyway, that's all in the maybe and future episodes. So what have you been up to?
Just with all my other stuff going on, family stuff, working on video stuff, and just spent all last night just working on, just trying to get prepared for this.
I appreciate it. I greatly appreciate it, trust me.
No problem.
Alright, so since we do not have a feature presentation, we're just going to plunge ourselves into the bonus update round.
Woo!
Title card appearing right now. Woo! Bonus update, yeah. And we're going to make it a bigger bonus update, like a special bonus update, a big update. Woo! Big special update. We're going to basically recommending and discussing more webcomics. More than one, that is, for each. So, do you want to start off?
Okay, okay, sure. Just anyone. So I'll go off with the most well-known webcomic that I have already on my list so far, called The GaMERCaT. It's a
Oh yeah, I know
yeah,
that.
yeah, it's a super cute one. You may have seen it on Facebook as one of the stickers that you can use. The little black cat with the handkerchief doing all sorts of cute faces. And it first started off as a webcomic, and it's basically a joke of the week sort of thing, all centering around video games. It'll do Zelda, Mario, Sonic, and all sorts of other Nintendo stuff. And it's just this little gameaholic cat who's just playing all the games that he can. And it's just such an adorable comic. Like we have the titular gamer cat, who is just huggably cute. Like I would really love to have like a plushie of it just in my room so I can just hug it sometimes. Yeah. Well, no. Well, that is not gamer cat at all. That's some sort of pastel colored pony.
Oh, you're right.
There's basically four cats in all. We have Glitch, a little baby kitten, who basically is the insert for any sort of kid who is into video games. And then we have there's the girl cat with the very big rim glasses, who's just the gamer girl. And then we got this big butch orange cat, who's basically just the I would say just sort of the moderate sort of gamer who plays games but doesn't like let it control his life like GamerCat does. And then you can see all these cats and their different sort of personalities bounce off one another as they go into each sort of game.
Yes,
And
I've seen a few comics of GamerCat on Tumblr because, you know, Tumblr is my main source for all of my webcomic choices. Surprisingly, you can find a lot of good material on Tumblr.
oh yeah, definitely. I believe Tumblr, which is just the best place where you can like post your comics and sort of stuff. Like I've seen a lot of like great artists. Like a new one that I've recently got into called The Odd Ones Out. I discovered on Tumblr, and thus I discovered his videos as well. Like Tumblr is just if you want to like kickstart your webcomic, you should try to start on Tumblr and basically just throw a bunch of tags into your comics so you can get
Yes,
reblogged and everywhere.
that's a good platform for starting off young artists in general, of all
Exactly.
kinds, of all walks of life, I dare say. You know, I subscribe to a lot of artists on Tumblr because I like their art, I like their comics and what they do. Maybe they sell their very personality with their work and all of that. The downside is that a lot of these artists happen to be furries. Not because they're furries, but because a lot of these furry artists happen to draw not safe for work art.
Yeah.
And they do it mostly because it pays well, and they had to make a living off of this. So, yeah,
Yeah.
that's if anything, Tumblr is an extremely progressive site.
Yeah.
And if you're not progressive, they'll make you progressive
Exactly.
on Tumblr.
That's just sort of like the image everyone has of Tumblr. Progressive to the point where you have to be progressive.
It's like the worst of the left side of politics, in a way. You know, the only other cat-related video game comic that I know, because there's more than one, is the even more known BG Cats,
Yeah.
which I was not going to recommend tonight. It's
Yeah.
not in my recommendation list, but since you brought up GamerCat, I might as well talk about it.
Yeah.
Video Game Cats, basically the comic book artist who created this now pretty well-established and ongoing comic that's not really updating all that much as of late. He took inspiration from his two cats and drew a comic series based off of them. Much like Gamer Cats, this is a joke of the week formula that branches off to many other facets of pop culture, not just video games. Also anime or TV, fanboy-isms in general. And there is a bright, colorful cast of characters, but probably the most appealing aspect of it is that there is a really, really fun dub of a bunch of those comics to be found on YouTube under the name of Omadon, which is the pseudonym of Edwin Tiong, which is a pretty celebrated voice actor for indie games.
Oh, nice.
Omadon is, I believe, inspired from the villain of The Flight of Dragons, but that's besides the point. So you can check out the comics, the VGCat's comics, and also the GaMERCaT comics, not to be confused.
Yeah, they're two different comics.
Yeah, you might confuse them. They have a similar title and they have cats. Both of them have cats in it. But anyway, you can find them both on Tumblr. And you can find the VGCat's dub on the Edwin Tiong channel, Omadon. I will leave links for everything in the doobly-doo. I can't believe I said doobly-doo. Oh boy. Who am I? Who am I? Idea channel?
I have no idea. So but let's get on to the next comics. One that I just recently found. It's called Husband and Husband.
Ooh, sounds forcefully progressive and a bit on the nose.
Well, it's probably named like that to be progressive, but I find it to be a very cute sort of comic. It's basically exactly what the title says. It's about a husband and husband living together in an apartment, and it's a joke of the week, slice of life.
Wacky shenanigans.
Yeah, monkey shenanigans and all that. It's basically there's one comic where it's just basically two husbands just trying to get the sheet onto one of their sides, and either one just hogging and all that sort of stuff, like not getting the groceries on time, and just any sort of like couple sort of spat that they can get into, but they love each other in the end. And also just a lot of gay jokes as well.
Yes, well,
it's unavoidable when you have a husband and a husband character. You're going to have those sort of things pop up.
It's not unavoidable. I mean, have you seen any gay jokes in an episode of Loud House, even though there's a character who has two fathers?
Well...
Okay, you might make the point they are not the focus. They're just there. But, I don't know, it seems to me that having gay jokes in a story starring gay characters is a trait of a straight writer writing of gay characters.
Well, no, well, for this comic, it's basically the two guys that are actually writing it. It's the two husbands that basically make the comic.
Okay, well...
So it's from them. They're mostly just poking fun at that sort of stuff.
Well, okay. It seems interesting.
Yeah. Like, I would say the biggest downfall of the comic is that it sort of has a scratchy sort of art style. It's like it's more sketched in, and then just like
it has its appeal. I mean, Johnny the Homicidal Maniac is all grit, sketchy artistry. The kind that pretty much defines a certain type of underground comic book style that was very popular at the time it came out. It has its charm, it has its place in pop culture. Yeah,
I would say that people would like this stuff. I'm just saying that, unlike GaMERCaT, where it has a very like colorful, popping sort of artwork, Husband and Husband has just very like laid back, sort of simplistic style to it. It's a little bit scratchy around the edges.
Okay.
But it's cute. But it's cute. So definitely watch it, and Madhog will place the link to their website in the description below. But as I actually checked their website, it's not as updated as it should be. So maybe it's on Tumblr as well.
Well, do you have anything else you want to recommend before I start my own list of recommendations? Because this may take a while.
I have one other artist who makes a few different sort of webcomics called CHartoons. CHartoons. And he
cartoons drawn with char?
Yeah, no, it's just the name.
Oh.
It's just capital C, capital H, and Artoons.
Okay.
And he does a few different webcomics, mostly for the site College Humor. He does one called Noob the Loser.
So
I Hate Mondays.
We're jumping off the professional webcomic artist, the one that are actually paid and hired by people to draw comics. They're supposed to be self-maintained.
Yeah. Well, this is basically he does comics for Noob the Loser with College Humor, and then I Hate Mondays for himself. Which I Hate Mondays is probably my favorite out of the two, which is basically a parody of Garfield, where every Monday he posts a comic where Garfield kills a physical representation of Monday in a horribly brutal way, whether he's throwing him inside of a blender, shooting him in the face, lighting him on fire, and all sorts of things.
I don't know, it seems the novelty might run off sooner than later, because it seems like the game Kill Your Boss game,
Yeah.
in quotation marks, the game Kill Your Boss diluted in a week-by-week basis.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I feel he's been able to keep it fresh. Sometimes, like, connecting it to recent movies that come out, recent shows, and all that sort of stuff, just to keep it very relevant to anything. And then he comes up with a bunch of original ideas as well, based off movies, based off shows, and based off just ideas in his mind.
That's great. Stuff. You know, Garfield is no longer named Garfield.
Yeah.
He is Gazorpa Zorpfield.
Gazorpa Zorpfield.
Because I'm Gazorpa Zorpfield, bitch. You don't watch Rick and Morty, do you? You should watch.
I've watched the whole series of Rick and Morty. I remember Gazorpfield.
You stupid, pathetic, you something.
Yeah.
It's so ad-libbed. So everything is improvised in that sketch. There's so much improvisation in that show.
Yeah.
It gives it its own identity.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, and then the other one by CHartoons is Noob the Loser, which is basically more of a slice of life sort of joke of the week sort of thing, starring the boyfriend and the girlfriend just living their lives, mostly focusing on the boyfriend as he goes to work at this 9-to-5 job and he utterly hates it. Basically, always talking back to the stupid customers that come up to him, and it's just basically, if you really like down to earth sort of like blown out of proportion in sort of slice of life comics, you'll like this one. It's basically the same style as I Hate Mondays, but he's more reserved. I'm not sure if that all makes sort of sense. I'm just thinking on the top of my head here.
Basically, one is the more grounded in reality version of I Hate Mondays. Mondays is the more over-the-top, metaphorical version of the other.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. I Hate Mondays is basically it's basically just like blowing out of proportions. I Hate Mondays stab. Just sort of like. Yeah, I feel like that. The Noob the Loser is just basically like, I'm living my life, stupid customers, cuddling my girlfriend in bed, all that sort of like everyday sort of thinking, but just turned into a little cartoony sort of way.
It seems nice.
Yeah.
Okay, it's time for my picks for the week.
Okay.
I need the water first. I am severely dehydrated, even though I yet to actually talk. Alright.
You ready?
So, yes. So, about a month and a half ago, I stumbled upon this comic book series, webcomic series. Basically around the time I stopped reading Homestuck for good. Yes, because spoiler alert, I have not been reading Homestuck for about 2 months now.
Yeah.
I shall explain why later on, but anyway. So I stumbled upon this web comic series, titled Death by Misadventures. Now, this is a difficult recommendation for me to give you. For one simple reason, because on one hand, this may be the wittiest, most hysterical comic I've read online in a long time. But on the other hand, it's been discontinued. And then it's been rebooted. And then it's not been updated in a while. So you can see the problem there, but let's talk about the positive aspect of it. Why you should even, bother to read it, even though you know it doesn't go anywhere. It's funny. It's like a prolonged Monty Python sketch, set in a fantasy world designed by Terry Pratchett.
Okay.
With a mixture of Douglas Adams steering in the pot. It's British observational madcap humor at its finest. It's all based about reaction, observations, witty remarks, and seeming random nonsense that actually makes fun and satirizes on the tropes of fantasy storytelling. in a way that's not dissimilar from Terry Pratchett's own satirization of fantasy novelization, although not anywhere near as complex. So we follow the perils of two witches, one by the name of Siren Dippity, and yes, puns galore in this story, and her friends, which is the classic unwitting straight man who gets dragged into the adventure for no reason whatsoever. And it's kind of hard to describe what the story is, because there isn't really a story. I mean, there is an attempt at a coherent story, but unfortunately the comic has the tendency of diluting every scene and every moment, every sequence of its narrative as much as it possibly can, because the artist and writer clearly loves its jokes, and he drags them forever up until they die and come back to life, which you might not even notice the first time you read it. I didn't, because I was having too much fun with the gags presented and the setups and the jokes. But in hindsight, it's a problem, and I can definitely understand why it led to the discontinuation of this comic, because eventually it became too over-bloated with its own over-prolonged sketches. And which is also a pity, because by the time the comic ended abruptly, there were like 5 different storylines set up to converge to a point, a specific point in the story. And another big problem that this comic has is the puns. I mean, the amount of puns in this story make Douglas Adams blush. It's puns galore, as I put it before.
Yeah.
It's funny, it's amusing at first, because it's clearly meant to be ironic, because there is this minor villain who uses puns all the time, and he has a motif, a tree motif in his attire, so he makes tree-related puns the entire time, and it's supposed to be lame, because he's a lame villain, so it's funny because of that, because of the awareness. But eventually everybody makes puns. The main characters' names are puns. Everything and everyone puns around, puns galore, puns thrown into your face constantly and continuously. And the worst part is that the minor villain that does all the tree puns constantly and consistently, it turns out to be a major character involved in almost every aspect of the comic, unfortunately. So that gets old real fast. And it's a shame, really, because otherwise this comic is really funny. I will not give you examples of it, because I want you to check it out for yourself, and they would not sound half as funny if I were to explain them to you. You would have to see them for yourself. But it's British comedy of the finest wine to be found online. And that's not actually Monty Python, in my opinion. Because it really is actually my kind of humor. The kind of humor that's based on observations of insanity from characters that are just going along with the insanity, with a sarcastic look at life and reality. You know, one of my favorite comic book characters of all time are Sam and Max, freelance police. I say comic book characters, but they are mostly known for their video games.
Yeah.
But they are my type of humor. They represent the kind of humor I appreciate the most. This kind of witty, sarcastic, satirical humor that's based on observations and seemingly overblown insanity being grounded up by a fitting sense of humor that just undersells it. That's funny to me. So that's Death by Misadventures, at least the original incarnation of Death by Misadventures, because the rebooted incarnation, it's visibly different from the previous comic. I mean, not only the style has changed, but also the humor has been slightly modified. Now it's more similar to The Slayers. It's more fast-paced, less dragging on with the jokes and the setups and the observations in general, But it loses its identity, if you ask me. Now, it's more similar to the Slayers. The previous incarnation had quite its own unique feel. So I think it's a step down overall.
Yeah, that's too bad.
You can still check it out. By the way, I should mention the artist goes by 2 names, Shenanimations and Shenaniganza. He has shenanigans in his name, basically. But if Death by Misadventures, you know, for all of these handicaps does not suit you, you can check out his other ongoing comic, which is more of a joke of the week formula with some occasional arc that updates, thankfully, pretty often on a weekly basis. It's titled Scalie Schoolie, and I love it. Scalie Schoolie stars an all-female cast of high school girls who just happen to be reptilians and amphibians.
Okay.
Now the comic sets off to poke fun on several facets and pretty much openly satirize certain aspects of otaku culture, specifically the idea that you can turn anything into a cute high school girl. And this one show about Lovecraftian cosmic horrors actually turned into cute girls comes to mind. So the joke here, the joke that's presented in the overall style of the comic, which, by the way, it's a really good style, I should point this out, is that let's take the ugliest, most threatening and menacing looking reptilians in the world, and let's turn them into cute girls, basically. And that already is hilarious, but also impressive because the guy seems to have quite the knowledge about reptilians, or species of reptiles and amphibians too, but he also manages to make each and every character perfectly distinguishable. And I don't just mean different species of animals, but also you will never see a representative of a specific species looking exactly like another representative of the same species. For example, there is this character whom is supposed to be a bush viper, whom is also a giant woman, and then there is another bush viper, which is actually a quarter of her size, and she's fangirling all over her. For example. Oh, and her mother too.
I see.
And there are poisonous frogs, there are salamanders, and they are all well drawn and presented in a charismatic and memorable way. Every character is instantly recognizable and instantly memorable, which is the cosmetic appeal of the comic. But the writing itself is brilliant, if you ask me, because I mentioned how it pokes fun on otaku culture. They are drenched with references to both specific anime tropes that otaku fawn over, or even specifically Dragon Ball Z. There is a character whom is fixated on having the best physical form, and she's obsessed with DBZ. So there is this one panel, this one comic strip, in which she reveals she was wearing weights all along. So she removes all her weights to gain ultimate physical power. Except she removes all of her clothes. It's much funnier if you see it for yourself, obviously.
Yeah.
So, Scalie Schoolie, it's funny, it has an identity, it's humorous, it's spot on when it comes to its satire, it has memorable characters, and it retains a lot of that witty, madcap, observational humor that defined Death by Misadventures before its rebooting.
Nice.
So yes, check it out, I definitely recommend it, especially if you're into, you know, scaly creatures, because I understand it's actually a subculture of the furry fandom. Yes. So, that comic is definitely for you for a variety of reasons. Check it out.
Nice.
So, those were my big 2 recommendations for this special bonus update round. I have many more comics to recommend, but I shall leave them for other times. Especially since they might require an even longer introduction and explanation.
Yeah.
So, I guess, with that said, we can actually jump ship over to the Homestuck segment and lose our mind entirely, as per usual. So, let us begin. So, I mentioned before that it's been a couple of months since I pretty much stopped reading Homestuck. It reached a point at the zenith of its insanity in which it became just unwieldy. It was generally pretty difficult to follow to begin with for a variety of reasons that I touched upon last time in my introduction of the phenomenon that is Homestuck. But it got worse, and I shall explain why later on, but first I really cannot wait to hear Boy's opinion of Homestuck, because he's been reading it too! Reading it, watching it, playing it, you name it. It's multimedia shenanigans going on there.
Yeah, I read a little bit of it, like, a few months back, but then I decided to, like, read it again from the beginning, and I can honestly say, I don't like Homestuck. I really don't me at all. And I read 250 comics, and I'm just like, okay, you got some interesting ideas, but bored now. It's just, it has a huge barrier to, like, actually get into it. So there's so much reading, so much jargon inside of it. It just makes me not care what's going on. And it's not really explaining what the world is supposed to be about. Like, the only thing I really got out of it, like at the beginning, we have John and Rose, and they sort of live in this sort of like video game virtual reality sort of thing where they can affect each other's homes with this video game they have.
I found that aspect intriguing, but also a bit underexplained, and which is weird, which is strange for me to say, because there are a lot of exposition dumps later on that really makes you all the more confused.
Yeah. Yeah, I did not have the patience to even make it that far. I finally got to 250, and I was just like, okay, now we got Rose now, and I don't care. We're in a new setting, and I don't understand what's going on. I don't have any sort of context to really like John or Rose, to basically like their jokes they have. Like, we have John and his cake making dad, and that could have been a funny scene, but it was just like, oh well, that happened.
Well, it has a payoff much later on, but yeah, Homestuck feels like climbing the Nietzsche's mountain, basically. You can only experience joy once you finish climbing the mountain. The problem is that this mountain just happens to be Mount Everest.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's worth the effort. But okay, so let me put it like this. Let's put all of the speculation and metaphors, subtext, allegories, everything aside, everything that I introduced and explained last time, everything that I found intriguing to analyze about Homestuck. Its self-awareness, its postmodern nihilistic approach at its own source materials, and also this idea of irony intertwined with sincerity being the very foundation of the Homestuck genesis, if you will, the potential for great characters and more interesting worlds to explore, and all of that. Let's take all of this heavy package and put it aside for a moment And let's just look at Homestuck on a superficial level. What is appealing about Homestuck on a superficial level? To me, personally, it's not the multimedia ventures, it's not necessarily the flash animations, even though they can get pretty good and interesting. To me, it's the writing. Yes, I actually enjoy the writing of Homestuck. I understand it's not for everyone, but again, it's that kind of detached, but at the same time, witty writing that reminds me, again, of my precious experiences reading Douglas Adams' books. I enjoy the dialect and the interesting and unique phrasing. I enjoy how the narrative and descriptive style changes depending on the character we are focusing on to reflect their personalities. I enjoy how the characters interact with each other through the message board, which is a great vehicle to showcase their personalities. I enjoy that aspect of Homestuck. I do not enjoy the story in the slightest, because I cannot understand a single thing that's going on. Especially if they introduce time travel and multiple timelines earlier on. But that's not even the high end of it.
Yeah.
It gets worse. Let me explain how it gets worse, because Homestuck used to be, at first, it seemed to be, this self-aware deconstruction that eventually turned out to be its own overimposing and complex story and universe. But then it became a self-aware deconstruction with its own overimposing universe that became aware of its overimposing universe and narrative. So, at some point, Homestuck became self-aware of its self-awareness, if you will. It became self-aware that its story was not making any sense, and then decided to make fun of the fact that its story make no sense.
I really do not like when writing goes in that sort of direction. Because it's just sort of a cop-out sort of thing. It's like, oh, no one... it doesn't make sense. Oh, make it a joke.
Actually, no, not even that. Here's the thing. Here's how Homestuck chooses to make fun of itself. If Homestuck, in its own right, was a parody and a deconstruction of various source materials that became its own phenomenon, then the Midnight Crew is a parody and satire of Homestuck. You know what the Midnight Crew is? Have you fumbled upon them?
No. No, I think maybe there was like 2 panels on the Midnight Crew that they showed us.
Yes, so at some point during regular Homestuck, you fumble upon this MS Paint adventure inside the MS Paint adventure, because obviously there is that joke, of the Midnight Crew, which is a bunch of characters that were actually part of a previous MS Paint adventure by the same guy. Okay? And now they're having their own MS Paint adventure inside the ongoing MS Paint adventure, Homestuck, and whatnot. So, at the end of Act 3, which was the apex of confusion for me, up until that point, there is an intermission. And that intermission is entirely dedicated to the story of Midnight Crew. And if you thought Homestuck was confusing and baffling, oh boy! Midnight Crew is the most infuriating bunch of nonsense I have ever had the misfortune of reading. It throws you right into an absurd story in which the Midnight Crew is fighting off some sort of interdimensional criminal gang with superpowers related to time and space, and nothing is explained why this is happening. They just throw you in, and stuff happens for an inordinate amount of time.
Yeah.
But here's the kicker. At the end of it, this all seems like nonsense. You can just avoid, you can just skip it, right? No, because at the end of it, we are introduced to the first troll character of the series. And I know the troll characters are going to be important later on in the actual Homestuck. So, this whole bunch of nonsense actually has a point at the end. And the point that it wants to make is that this was all a complete waste of time. Because it tells you right at the end. Except it wasn't, because it's linked with the main story. So what the hell is going on? I'll tell you what's going on. Midnight Crew. The Midnight Crew intermission in between Act 3 and Act 4. It's supposed to be a parody of Homestuck.
Yeah.
So, it's supposed to be a parody of Homestuck that became its own thing, much like Homestuck, and then it ended up having its own confusing story that relates to the actual Homestuck. So,
oh my god.
Homestuck was a deconstruction of various source materials that became its own thing, and then became self-aware of being its own thing. Likewise, Midnight Crew, it's a parody of Homestuck that became its own thing that's linked with the story of Homestuck.
Oh my god.
And then I stopped reading, because I couldn't take this anymore. I'm sorry. I might have shot myself in the foot when I started this Homestuck segment, because this might very well be the last time I do it.
Yeah.
For a while. Maybe I will get back on to read Homestuck in future installments of this podcast, but I don't know if I really want to, honestly.
Yeah.
And then it's been so long, it's been 2 months ever since. So... Oh! Here's something that bothers me. Like, you have no idea. Let's go into details about certain aspects of Homestuck. Remember that blue box that was stuck in the dad's car?
Oh, the green box that was stuck in the dad's car, if I remember.
It was a blue box. He received the green box, it had the game in it. The blue box had something else in it that was important for the game or something like that.
Yeah.
And that box was sent to him from his friend that you have not met yet, which is this girl character that I forgot the name. Basically, this box has managed to travel both time and space, the past, the present, and the future, involving the Carapace people stuck in a place that was the locations where the girl character lived in the present time, and for the specific purpose of arriving to its destination and being stuck in an endless time loop. I'm yet to understand what is the point of all that, if it even has a point, but at this point, speaking of points, I stopped caring about the point.
Yeah.
It is so baffling. I mean, it was fun at first because I liked the humor and the writing, and believe it or not, I was invested in the characters. But it's clear that it suffers from being the kind of story that's been written as it goes.
Yeah.
And it is also clear that Mr. Hussey is trying so hard to wrestle control of the story from the actual readers and fans that are suggesting actions. Yeah. Because the most important points, bullet points of the story, which eventually come after being trampled by horrible pacing because of all the suggestions, the forum suggestions, those are firmly in the hands of Hussey. What the fans are left to do was basically waste time suggesting egregious actions for the characters to do and waste thousands of panels before the story actually finally gets going miraculously. I'm glad that at some point Hussey decides to completely abandon the interactive portion of Homestuck and just focus on telling a straightforward story. But I don't know when that is going to happen, and I, quite frankly, don't have the patience and I don't have the time.
Yeah,
mind
really.
you, don't have the time to find out when that happens. Maybe it becomes really, really interesting and good and everything makes sense somehow. But for now, I've lost the will to get invested in Homestuck. I'm sorry. I'm
Yeah.
sorry if you were looking forward for the Homestuck segment, but again, I shot myself in the foot with this one.
Yeah. Homestuck to me is an idea with a lot of potential to it, but especially at the beginning, it really doesn't have that sort of idea where it wants to go at that point because it has all the suggestions, and the way it tells its story in single panels just sort of slows everything down. So it has to take me like 2 hours to go to 250 panels to like get more of the story. And you just every time you just skip a panel, it's like, okay, when's the story gonna start? When's the actual story gonna start? Okay, we're just getting a bunch of other jargon, a bunch of other jargon. Where's the actual story? And it just becomes a slog to like push through it all. And as an experiment, I decided to like look at one of the panels from like that was like done like maybe the other day, and I was just like, "Whoa, where are we now?" Like starting with just a kid in his room, and now we just have like two troll guys talking to each other doing mahjong, something like that.
Honestly, the moment in which Homestuck really started to be fun for me to read was when we get to the cool kid character. By the looks of it, you have not gotten there.
Yeah. What panel is that? When does the cool kid show up?
I don't know what number it is. Homestuck is interesting, fascinating, and open to a lot of interpretation, more than it is actually enjoyable.
Yeah. If you
That's
really want
its
to read
greatest
Homestuck,
flaw.
you need a lot of time to put into it. You need to put the time into it, and I just don't feel like I want to put the time into it. It's not grabbing me with anything. So I think I'll
Uh,
be putting Homestuck down for myself.
yes, well, for me it's the opposite. I was grabbed by it pretty much instantly because, ooh, wow, wee, woo,
Yeah.
reasons. But then it eventually lost its novelty and it just became a poorly paced, confusing mess in that
Yeah.
regard. It is still fascinating and interesting just to talk about it, but again, you need to have the patience and you need to have the time to slog through all of this. And we are
Yeah.
grown-ups. We barely have the time to do this podcast recording.
Yeah.
I barely have the time to play Puzzle Bubble Galaxy on my DS.
Yeah. And I want to do other video games and such other videos, and I'm
Ooh,
just trying to
ooh,
make the time to
we
do
sh-
that.
We should do a Let's Play together. Yes. Okay, let's talk about games in our comic book podcast.
Yeah. Or how about we just go back to just comics and just finish this up? Because basically just my thoughts on it are, if you have the time and patience for it, then you can try Homestuck. But with just the single panel style of it, it's a very slow read. It's a slow boil until you actually get somewhere.
Yes. And the most interesting parts of Homestuck are the exceptions to the rule, in which you have an interaction, browser game, or point-and-click adventure game, and a flash animation that moves the plot forward. But in between all of those, we have a lot of pacing problems.
Yeah. It's just like getting a single piece of popcorn for eating a bunch of bland Tic Tacs.
That's a clever analogy, I think.
Well, I came up with it on the top of my head.
Well,
I'm clever.
good for you, man!
Yeah.
Homestuck.
Or more like stuck into boredom. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I guess we can wrap up this podcast.
Yeah.
I thought it was going to be longer, honestly. I thought you were going to say a lot more about Homestuck.
I like the ideas in it. I like that whole, like, it's the video game interacting with the real world sort of thing, and moving on into, like, time travel and all that sort of stuff.
Which is actually done much better than most shows or stories about the interaction between gaming world and reality, which usually end up being pretty pretentious. Sword Art Online!
Yeah. Yes, these are all good ideas, but it's just implemented in a story that's all single panel. Like, you gotta, like, take 10 panels basically to say one thing about the story, really. And
Again,
it's just like, I don't care. I don't care anymore.
Yes, again, my main drive was the writing, the characters, and whatever could happen to these characters. But, yes. Again, you need to have the fortitude and the free time. Alright, so do you want to plug anything in before we go off?
If you just want to see more of me, you can go to my channel, Toongrin. We've got a whole bunch of top 10s coming out, a new cartoon
Top
quarter.
dance!
Yep, top 10s, because that's the only thing on YouTube that's gonna get us views! Yay!
Unless YouTube decides, you know what, this is not a good content. Demonetized!
Yes, exactly, that whole thing that's happening.
What the hell are they... Yeah, you know what, never mind.
Yeah. It's basically a thing that they enacted like months ago, but that's just now it's like just like, oh no, we're really enacting it now. But not to everything though. Only to certain things, so we can make it kid-friendly on YouTube.
Yeah, you say kid-friendly, I say vanilla.
They want that sort of like very easy sort of malleable content that just go to everybody.
You know, I dread to think what might happen to I Hate Everything in the near future.
Yeah.
Considering what he's been through and considering what his content is.
Yeah.
Ooh boy, poor guy.
Yeah, a lot of movie reviewers are going to have a lot of problems with this, if it comes to it. Like, I personally have not had any sort of demonetization happen yet, so we don't know. It could just be another YouTube thing where it's just like, oh, big YouTube's coming for us, but, oh, nothing's changed, really. Except
Well, I've seen on Twitter a couple of people who actually were big reviewers who suffered from that idiocy.
Yeah.
There is this guy who made a review about Sonic CD. The title was Why Sonic CD is a Horrible Unplayable Mess. It's been demonetized for having not good topics. That's
just the most scariest thing of it. Because now they're just being like very blunt about it. Like, if you have a controversial opinion, you can be demonetized. That's basically what YouTube is saying now.
Well, that derailed into a really not fun conversation that's not about comic books. But sometimes you need to address unpleasant things.
Indeed.
And you need to deal with them. With torches and pitchforks, possibly.
Or just finding another way around it. Like, me and Nero are just looking for, like, different video plays to, like, expose our content on, making our own site and all that sort of stuff. So if you're super scared about demonetization, just look for something outside of YouTube. YouTube may be the biggest thing, but maybe...
What can you do outside of YouTube? What? Are you going to go to Dailymotion, who doesn't take you seriously? Are you going to go to Vimeo? Are you kidding me? What? Where are you going to post your videos?
Oh, JW Player is one of the sites that
you need to pay for that service. You need to have your own website.
Yep, I know.
So that's not an option open to everyone.
Yeah, I'm not saying that it's open to everyone. There are different things to go. There's Springboard, which is basically an application process that's basically free. Yeah, I know. I didn't like Springboard that much either. But there are definitely other sites to do it. But sometimes you gotta do that. Sometimes you maybe have to use YouTube as a sort of like advertisement sort of thing. Like you post a little clip on YouTube, basically brings everybody to your new video player. That sort of thing. I'm not saying it's like the best sort of solution. I'm just saying, if YouTube's gonna be like this, we gotta show them that it's their wrong business move and show them like that business changes if they do this sort of stuff.
Then again, this might be just a temporary phase that YouTube is having, because YouTube has been having a lot of temporary phases. More temporary phases than a hormone-driven teenager as of late. They try something for a while, it doesn't work, they change it. And so, if enough people complain about this vocally, like they did for the previous crisis,
where's the fair use?
which led to some positive changes, a little bit of it, but better than nothing, then this might just go away. But we need to start actually protesting this, like you have.
Yeah.
Like I'm doing right now. This is not right. Hashtag YouTube.
I just did hashtag shame on YouTube.
Now, by saying this, this video will be automatically demonetized.
Yep, we got controversial opinions here. We said the exact opposite of why everyone loves Homestuck. So that's just basically on that.
Oh my gosh, that might actually happen. Now I'm scared.
Well, enjoy that. Because Sorry. Sorry about that. I thought I would be the only one that's coming in with the unpopular opinion. I didn't think that you fell out of love with Homestuck too. I'm sorry.
This podcast is over now. Goodbye!
Bye-bye.
I need to save my content!
Yeah.